So let's talk now about a study out of Sweden that was looking at the same thing. They were trying to evaluate whether acetaminophen is safe. But this study was conducted a little bit differently. So you remember our sample size for that American study was pretty small. This one is a very large one. We love Sweden. They do these like nationwide cohort studies where they look at the data of the like entire population. So, as compared to like the way that RFK Jr. is doing it, this is a more ethical way because they're not putting people in charge who have literally given kids um, castration chemicals. Um, it's a more impartial way to do a population study. This is the right way to do it. So they got a sample of around 2.5 million children born between 1995 and 2019.
Okay, so this one's got like over 2 million people.
2.5, yeah, it's huge.
So if our first study was 300 people, when you look at what happens to 2 million people, this is either going to corroborate what we found, or it's going to show us something different. This is a very statistically significant sample size.
What if I told you it's about to do both? Corroborate and show us something different.
This is interesting. Yeah.
So they looked at them. So basically, children born between 1995 and 2019 with a follow-up through December 31st, 2021. So initially, they looked at the raw data, and they found the same thing. There appeared to be a connection between ADHD, autism, intellectual disability, and acetaminophen usage. So in total, they found that around 7% of the children in the study were exposed to acetaminophen during pregnancy. So they totaled up the crude absolute risk. This is like how it's phrased in the paper. The crude absolute risk at 10 years of age for those not exposed versus those exposed to acetaminophen were 1.3 versus 1.5% for autism. 2.5 versus 2.9% for ADHD, and 7% versus 8% for intellectual disabilities. So there's a modest increase with acetaminophen exposure. So they corroborate that, right? But when they added in sibling data, it changed everything. So basically,
Whoa. Okay, that's super fascinating because like on face value, and I'm curious if they did the controls here too. But at face value, those are some compelling statistics. Now you're telling me, so talk to me about siblings.
yeah, so they didn't do a control. They were basically just looking at medical records of any person who was prescribed acetaminophen or like purchased it. But the siblings in this study, the siblings are the controls. So they looked at parents who had multiple children and they compare the ADHD and autism rates in the sibling for parents who took acetaminophen for both kids versus parents who only took it for one of the two kids. So they found that the higher rate of ADHD and autism with acetaminophen usage was negated entirely when you look at siblings.
Wow.
So the siblings are the controls.
So like again on at face value, those statistics are compelling. But when you introduce this is why having a control is so important in a study like this. And this is something that when they're testing medication, they have controls. They have all these different ways for looking at the efficacy of medication and vaccines. So what they find? So they had the control, and it negated the initial findings.
Same rate for the siblings, basically. So they said that you can conclude basically like it's likely genetic. They didn't necessarily, this study can't assert whether or not there are environmental factors at play as well. But basically, they were like it's not the acetaminophen. Like we can kind of say that with a fair degree of confidence.
From this study, you actually can a conclusion you can make is acetaminophen did not cause the ADHD. In fact, there's a stronger case that it is genetic. There is like you actually start to have correlatory evidence that genetics do play a role.